not here. I'm gonna give him,
Sue here.
I'm gonna email him.
There he is.
Oh, there he is. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
And Jason. Hi, Jason.
Hello, congratulations, everybody.
Thank you.
Approval of the agenda? Anyone?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes. We do have to add that Fiona was in attendance at the meeting on the 5th. So a motion to approve with that change.
Pre-COVID meeting.
Yes,
Oh,
I'm
right.
so
Yeah,
sorry.
oh my God.
Oh
Pulling
my
those minutes
goodness.
together,
Yeah, it
trust
was-
me.
Yeah.
There was a
Right,
challenge.
Marissa?
Forever ago. Oh my God.
I only had so much, man,
Feels like 10 years ago.
doesn't it?
Ooh.
Okay, entertain a motion with the change.
So moved.
Second.
Public participation, is there anyone in the public? No? Okay, move right into discussion and next steps. Sexual harassment students, Title IX sexual harassment students.
Right, so these kind of go together, the students and the personnel, and Kim's worked really hard on these with our legal counsel, who helps us out with the Title IX stuff. So do you want to just
Sure.
explain to everybody?
So there was new legislation that was passed effective August 14th for Title IX that just changed a lot of the components of what districts' expectations are, what the obligations are. The most significant changes are really around the titles of the people involved in a Title IX investigation. So we now had to designate 4 different roles specifically that they've outlined, which is that we have to have a Title IX coordinator, we have to have a decision maker, we have to have an appeal decision maker, and an investigator. I missed the investigator. So it's Title IX coordinator, investigator, decision maker, and appeal decision maker. And so we have to designate those 4 roles, and we have to follow very specific guidelines for the investigation protocol, which is outlined in the policies that you have in front of you. And we have to adopt Title IX policies that are compliant with all of those expectations. The attorney really recommended that we not replace our existing sexual harassment policies, but that we kind of do it as a sub-policy to those policies. Because there is sexual harassment that maybe doesn't fall under Title IX, but would still have a legal obligation to be investigated under state and federal sexual harassment laws. So there's kind of 2 components. And we wouldn't have to follow all those guidelines and roles and investigation protocols that we have to follow under Title IX to just investigate a sexual harassment complaint. So really the recommendation from legal is that we keep our existing policies, but we add a component in them that says for sexual harassment, she gave me the exact wording, which I didn't actually type it into these policies because I didn't have it in Word, but the wording that she said would say something like sexual harassment that falls under Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, U.S. General Statute 1681, C policy, and then, the recommendation was to number it 6170A and 4080A. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So you have our existing policies for both students and personnel, and then you have the recommended policies for students and personnel.
Right, to cover
The
Title IX.
recommended Title IX.
Mhm.
Recommended Title IX.
So the recommended Title IX would be 6170A.
Correct,
And I think it's
for
40,
students, and then
For
40,
students, right?
Yep.
4080 for staff.
4080A for the personnel.
But then there's procedures for reports and complaints. That's all together
Yep,
Yes,
as one.
yes.
Okay, so you'll number the pages in title.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And this is our existing.
that's our existing, yes.
So this is just added.
Mhm.
Yeah. We'd be adding a new policy.
We'd be adding almost an addendum to our current sexual harassment policy to cover the Title IX piece of it. Because not all sexual harassment complaints rise to that level of Title IX.
Right, but it's a separate policy.
Correct.
Correct.
Can it be 6171
However you,
Yeah,
yes, however the board wants to do it.
it can be. It's
instead of an A?
It
Sure.
could be. I think Melinda recommended that just so that there was an understanding that they were related. That's all. But yes, we could.
What- yeah,
They're
whatever.
separate.
We could make it a separate number.
Absolutely.
I think it would be less confusing.
Sure.
A separate number.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. Kathy, Jess? Anyone?
I don't think it makes any difference, really.
Okay.
What I was gonna say, so procedures,
Mhm.
we're including the procedures in the policy manual as well.
They are currently in, that's why you ended up with those, because they're in the policy now. They're in the policy. Many of our current policies have the procedures there. We haven't cycled through all of our current policies.
But
Right.
we've been trying to take the procedures
Right.
out. So
Right, so why are the procedures in?
Because why are they in this packet?
Yeah. Why are they in with the policy?
they don't necessarily have to appear with the policy. We know what the procedure is, and so
Right,
then
they don't
it's
have to be,
clarified
but
at the
we-
site.
We haven't done that whole audit of every single policy. So they have not yet been called out of every single policy in the manual. Is that what you're asking?
I'm asking, this is new, the Title IX.
Right.
Oh,
And these procedures go with Title IX.
Are you talking about the grievance procedure? Because the grievance procedure, based on this,
Procedures for reports and complaints of sexual harassment.
right,
of
that's the
students.
grievance procedure.
complaint.
It's a
Yeah.
complaint, but yes. Well, in this case,
I think
They'd have to,
the actual steps that someone has to take have to be part of the
file a
policy.
Title IX grievance has to be part of that policy. It's different than the procedures for like a field trip policy, for example, or,
Okay.
right? Because it's a legal,
That's part of the statute, that it says that your policy that you adopt has to very clearly outline your steps, and they call it the grievance procedure, which is how someone would file a grievance that they feel like they've been violated by Title IX. That's what's detailed in the statute,
not to be confused with grievance.
not like a union
Like a union
grievance.
And
grievance.
not to be confused with general
with
procedure.
the.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
It is confusing.
Can it be a different name?
You mean a different word?
The statute
So-
actually says you have to have a grievance procedure posted. So it
So maybe
actually,
this should say grievance procedures for reporting?
I think it says it on the second page. I think it says formal grievance procedure.
I'm confused now. It says procedure,
Mhm.
and then there's students' procedures for reports and complaints of sexual harassment of students.
So what
So
are you
she's
asking? You want me to put,
Grievances, he says grievance here.
you want that at the top of the
It doesn't
page?
say it here.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know, I just
questioned it because we've been working so hard at removing the procedures.
Right.
You're right, and I,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
understand, but this is a different,
I mean, if this is all statutorily required
Right.
to
It
be
is.
included, then
it is. It's,
so
and
then
that's,
can
we
you
have to
put like
include it.
Title IX?
well, sure,
think-
because it's,
I think the
because
policy is
it's,
titled
it is
Title
Title
IX.
IX, so it's part of the Title IX.
Because, right, on this page, it does say students Title
So it
I
would
think
all
the
be-
confusion is that this, we're
So-
calling, it's because they're calling it procedures.
When
And,
really
and
it's-
our definition
Yeah,
of
right.
our procedures for our other policies that are not grounded in statute like this one are different. That's why I threw out like the field trip policy, for example. We have internal procedures
Right.
that don't have to be part of that policy.
I get that, but then if someone reads this, procedures, why are procedures in here, just like,
Mhm. Because
Right,
they
so I
have to
think
be.
we have to just explain to them that we have to put it there. It is required by the state.
I mean, maybe
The
we can.
statute
by
actually
the-
says you have to
Right,
include
you have to-
procedures in your
Correct. but all-
policy, so that's the
well,
reason
can
why.
it
I
say
think.
required Title
Right,
IX
I was just gonna
procedures for
say, we
reports?
can add required procedures.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we
To
do
just
that?
clarify it.
So
Sure.
really like those two things that you have separate, it would be actually all together.
Right.
This would all be
Right.
617.
But- But see how, yeah,
But it does look like two different things. so
Correct.
that's fine.
And on this one, it does say administrative regulations, but if we put required again, it'll
Yeah.
clarify it.
That's, I think, our previous one, right? The one that says administrative regulations. 'Cause I
That's,
don't think
yes, without. the
That's our
A.
existing one.
That's our existing.
Yeah.
one.
So-
That-
so this on the Title IX one, right.
Yes, we will add something at the
Just
top
to-
so that
for less
it's clear.
confusing-
Mhm.
Clearer, right, right.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
it still means the same thing.
Mhm.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
On page 6, section 9, the first paragraph talks about,
Sorry, yeah, no, I just-
Oh, the policy itself?
yeah,
which
the actual
page?
policy.
I'm not sure which
Page
policy.
So
six.
page 6, item 9.
That's of our existing policy, right?
Where are you,
Yes.
Fiona?
In the
Where-
That's our
The first
existing current
policy.
policy.
6170.
the
Not
first
the one we're
student
changing.
Oh, this one.
Six.
So you're completely replacing all
No.
of this language.
You just want to add
Right
it,
here.
right? You
number
want to
9.
add, you want to keep what exists and then
Yeah, we're
add.
not making any changes to
Because
our
you need
existing
both.
policy.
Right, but I see what you're saying, because number 9 does reference Title IX in our existing policy.
Right. So
So it's
that,
just confusing to me, not just the Title IX, but, and maybe it's just because I don't understand it, but it talks about that will promptly commence an investigation of the complaint. And then in 9A, it talks about will meet with the complainant within 10 days to discuss the nature of the complaint.
right, so that's,
Yeah.
that would be the sexual harassment. So that's where they said, add a statement in our policy that says for sexual harassment that falls under Title IX, refer to the new policy now, is what they said. So they said wherever you have a reference to Title IX in your existing, so we could go through
Right.
that.
See
Whole
policy.
thing.
6171.
Now you can.
Yeah.
Exactly, and reference the
Yes.
new Title IX policy. But this would still be the procedure for sexual harassment that doesn't meet the Title IX definition.
Well, this speaks to the Title IX coordinator.
Who would still be the person that would get sexual harassment complaints, which is me. So,
Yeah.
Yes. So the Title IX coordinator would still be the person that should get any sexual harassment complaints, even if it doesn't fall under Title IX. But if something does meet the definition for a Title IX complaint, then it would refer to this policy. And we just did 2 full days of training for our building-based Title IX coordinators, and for our district decision maker and our appeal decision maker. So everyone really has gone through that extensive training. And then our administrators are going to be getting a half-hour overview November 19th, to make sure that everybody's clear on the differences, really. And what the really the difference is that if a student reports sexual harassment or a staff member reports sexual harassment, they really have to be given the policies, and then they have to be asked if they want to file a Title IX complaint, and they actually have to sign a written complaint to trigger a Title IX investigation.
So a coordinator for any sexual harassment, be it Title IX or not, the coordinator is the Title IX coordinator, does both.
Mhm.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So a complaint comes up, they get referred to the Title IX coordinator, who then determines whether or not it falls under Title IX.
Well, they would give the person that's filing the complaint the policy and say, do you want to file a formal complaint? If that person files a formal complaint, that's when an investigation under the Title IX definition has to get triggered. If they don't want to file a formal complaint, that doesn't preclude us from having to do an internal investigation, but it wouldn't necessarily have to follow all those guidelines under the investigator and the decision maker and the appeal decision maker and the notifications that are required and all the other pieces that follow.
So we would allow somebody to file a complaint that doesn't rise to the level of Title IX? We'd-
Correct. Because there's still sexual harassment laws that still have to be abided by, even if it's not Title IX.
Right, but who decides whether it fits
If it's
under
Title
this
IX.
one or under the Title IX one?
So that would be the Title IX coordinator. So I'm the
Right,
district
that's
Title
what-
IX coordinator. And so I would work with the school-based coordinators to make a determination on any of those steps that need to happen.
So the Title
So-
IX coordinator determines
Yes.
whether or not it falls under Title IX,
Correct.
not the person.
Well, it's complicated, but the person has to file a formal complaint for us to do a formal investigation under Title IX. If they don't want to file a formal complaint, we can still investigate it under sexual harassment, but it wouldn't qualify for an investigation under Title IX if the person does not want to file a formal complaint under Title IX. That's part of the new regulation, that they actually have to sign a formal complaint, and then we have to do notifications. It doesn't mean we don't investigate it, it just means it's a different investigation. And that's different than the way it used to be. The way it used to be was anything that was under a sexual harassment component, if there was an implication for some kind of missing educational benefit, it had to be investigated under Title IX. That's no longer the case. But that's because the investigation protocol has become much more extensive.
Clear as
Do
mud.
we get a lot of these complaints, Kim?
Under the old definition, like I said, anything that, had any kind of
But do we get the claims?
we get some investigations that we've had to do because of things that came forward, but now, no, I don't think we're gonna get a lot because they actually have to file a formal complaint, and it's very different than it was before. So no, I don't think there's going to be, and even the attorney doesn't think that we're going to get very many of these.
Does it need to, or maybe it already does, and I don't see it, but does it need to say in here at some point, when do you know that you need to stop following this policy and go to the next policy?
I don't think
You
it
know what I mean?
specifically outlines that in here, because that's part of our training that we get. And so that's really for me as the Title IX coordinator to decide,
Mhm.
because there would be too many scenarios to be able to
Right.
outline that in a policy.
Well, because you had said something about them wanting you to add something about the Title IX as referenced in policy 6.
Right.
Mhm. Right. If you get this far.
Yeah.
See policy such and such.
Well, that's what I was
kind of.
wondering, like, at what
Mhm.
point does that
Mhm.
become, because the Title IX coordinator is the person handling all of these things.
Right.
But only at one point does it become something where you now need to refer to this other thing.
So I think that has to be the administration decision when they get a complaint. They have to really, and it goes for any complaint that we get at the school level, right? I say this all the time when I'm talking about investigations with administrators. You may get one complaint that comes your way in the school, and you have to look at it from multiple lenses. Is it a DCF issue? Is it a Title IX issue? Is there a police involvement? Like all the different pieces that you have to do, there's so many components. And one investigation could, fall under multiple different guidelines. There's Title VII, there's Title VI, there's all different pieces that you have to look at. So, I don't think you can quantify all of that in a policy. I think that's part of training and education that we have to look at within each scenario.
So, but like, in between which of these numbers, I understand what you're saying, I'm not trying to be a pain, but like, in between which of these numbers would be the point in time when somebody would have to make a determination
I don't know that I can, I
protocol
mean,
to follow.
I think
You know what
when
I
you
mean?
look, when you get the first complaint
Mhm.
is when you really have to look at all the different pieces. So, like I said, I don't know that you could pinpoint that.
Because it would vary from case to
Right.
case.
Every single case is so different.
So the policy is more like that umbrella view, the broad view.
And the 12-hour training is really where we got the information and the details. Because it was 2 full days, 6 hours each day,
Mhm.
that we all got all those details. So, and even that, all you can get is some scenarios, and in every case, you still may need to seek legal guidance because you still may not be clear.
So if someone doesn't sign, but you do the investigation, could it happen that it was a Title IX violation?
Not if the person
Doesn't
Yeah,
sign?
it's unlikely. I mean,
doesn't want to make that claim.
like I said, part of the training is that there's circumstances where a Title IX coordinator can make a decision, but, it's very, it's just complicated.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Fiona?
So I guess maybe I'm simplifying this a little bit. So the way I look at it, if the person files the Title IX complaint, they're saying they have a Title IX violation.
Mhm.
The Title IX coordinator would then look at it and determine if
Yep.
it is a Title IX violation. And if it's not, it would automatically resort to our other policy. If it is, we would follow this policy.
Yeah.
Right?
Basically,
That's how I
yes.
get it, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think there wouldn't be any steps. It would just be if it is, we're on this policy, but if it's not, we go back to that. policy.
Right, it's just that some people obviously have a different personal interpretation, especially if they feel they've been in some way violated, right? So that's why an objective third party looks at it and makes the decision about which way to go.
So is any written complaint assessed to see if it falls under Title IX?
Any written complaint is assessed to see any statutory guideline that it might fall under. So that's, training that I think the administrators got 2 years ago, that we got through CAPS, and Shipman and Goodwin did a really nice job of kind
Yeah.
of compiling that all together for everybody. So that, if it's, if this happened, you call DCF. If this happened, you call, if you need to contact the police, you may need to call 211. You may need to call, so there's all these what if scenarios, because and sometimes you have to do all of it depending on what's going on, because you may have a whole bunch of different components. So I think any complaint that any administrator gets is looked at and through all of those lenses. This is just new legislation that came out August 14th, which, just being candid, it's already being fought at the, at the federal level, and it might all get reversed. So, but we have to adopt a policy because that's part of the guideline. So, I mean,
So here we are.
so, so they are vehemently, there are multiple interest organizations that are trying to have all this legislation from August 14th reversed. So who knows where that's gonna land, so.
Any comments, Sue? Mark?
No, it's very thorough. It's quite a lot to read there.
Jason?
Is this, I do have one basically generic question. Is this something that we wrote up or retyped internally? Or is it something that,
The attorney drafted it for me. The attorney that we work with on Title IX.
there's just quite a few typos in it. I'm kind of a grammar Nazi.
Which
Sorry.
one? In the new policy
I
or the
did-
old one?
I'm looking at, what page was I on? I think it's the old policy. There's some, I just started going through a little bit of it and saw some. I can print it and proof it again, or maybe she can spell check it. I don't know. It's just the document.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
if you can send them to us,
sporadic.
try to correct it.
What?
I said, you can send it to us. I guess we can try to correct it before it goes to the full board.
But she's saying in the old, in the old.
Well, we're gonna
policy,
make
you guys
those
do
minor
both of
changes
them.
in the old
Yeah.
policy anyway, right? We're gonna
Yeah.
do the revision that adds that Title IX language that references it, so we can try to correct that at the same time.
Or just, can somebody just convert it? Can you spell check a PDF? I don't
No,
think
we
we
can
can.
convert
This
it
is
and then do the spell
We'll
check.
do the spell check.
Yeah. we've got-
Okay, and all right, I think you'll pick it up there. It just seems like a lot to do manually. I can convert it and try and convert it. I don't know if I have access to do that, but,
No, you shouldn't have to do that.
and then,
We'll do the spell-
okay, and then, this is a very broad question, but, being new to the board and to this committee, what is Title IX?
It's a very long question, but basically Title IX is.
Yeah, the Reader's Digest version will be fine.
Yeah, so basically Title IX is any kind of sexual harassment. And it primarily has been referenced to students, but it does apply to employees of public school districts as well.
So any kind of sexual harassment
Hold on,
whatsoever.
this is not done. It's sexual harassment that then somehow hinders the ability to get their educational benefit. So if they are subjects of sexual harassment and somehow they are, not attending school because they feel like they're sexually harassed and now now they're failing classes because they were sexually harassed.
Okay,
That's
So
a Title IX violation, as long as we prove that there was legitimately sexual harassment.
all right. So that's where the decision comes in for the Title IX coordinator to make the distinction between a Title IX complaint versus a non-Title IX.
Right. Versus
Okay, that's
just
it.
sexual
Okay.
harassment that maybe doesn't have an
Got it.
educational implication that
Mhm.
hinders someone from getting an educational benefit.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question.
Okay. So with those changes, we'll bring to the full board.
Next, so next is not actually, the topic is not actually for policy, right? I mean, it doesn't really relate to, I didn't bring the field trip policy because I'm not sure that this.
No, we have the other sexual harassment.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we're handling them both at the same time. Same
Oh, yeah,
thing,
they go-
basically same,
Basically,
It's the
same thing and
One's
you'll.
for staff. and
Isn't it the same thing?
same
Okay.
exact,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay,
sorry.
perfect.
Right.
This- No.
Thought we were handling those in bulk.
I was doing it separate, so it was 4081,
Yes,
okay.
If,
if we don't have a
if we don't ever
4081,
have,
I
yeah, I
don't
might
know
have
if
to
we
find
do,
a
that's
different
the
number,
only.
but,
If we don't have a 4081, go back to the A,
Okay.
oh, really? Okay.
okay?
Would it make sense to just do the A for both of them?
Yes.
That's what we were gonna do,
All right.
but
do the A
Ellen
for
didn't like
both
that.
of them. I didn't like that.
Or do a separate number for both of them, but just like to do it.
Right, but if there's not a separate number, then you'll have to go.
Oh, I see what you
revert to
mean.
the A.
Do the same
All
for
right.
both. Yeah.
Right,
So
yes,
we can
yes,
add the
that's what I
second
meant, do the
number for
same for
both of
both.
them, but if either one of them doesn't
I
have
mean-
the next consecutive number, then we'll
Correct.
do the A.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Got it.
All right,
That's
makes
what I
sense.
meant.
But just to Sue's point, to Sue Ferguson's point, it is in fact an addendum to the existing policy, right?
Mhm.
So doesn't it make more sense to have it just, and this is semantics, I suppose, at this point, but to have it be 6170A and 4080A? Because it points directly to those two parts of the statute, or does it not? Is it harder to follow if we make it 6171 and 4081?
Well, I think that's why the attorney had
Yeah.
said, sort of, it's almost
The
like a
A.
sub-policy to our main sexual harassment policy. I think that was her point. That,
Then do an A.
okay,
I think personally it'd be easier to follow, but again, like I said, it's semantics
there you
and
go.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's
so
an A.
it's
That
a
answers
Done
it.
deal.
Thank you,
Thank
Marissa.
you.
Okay.
So we have a policy 4081, so we have to do the A.
Problem
oh,
solved.
perfect. That was easy. Okay.
Okay,
Okay, on to C, Washington DC field trip 2021.
right. So this came to this committee because it really didn't have a home, this conversation anywhere else, right? And if
And I think I volunteered it to the committee.
Thank you,
Oh,
Sue.
thanks, Sue.
Yeah, I know.
And I understood the question to be with respect to ninth graders, right? That was really the question for discussion. That would this year's ninth graders be
Those who missed.
those who missed it, and eighth graders would be invited to.
I had another question for Jason that went along, or for the committee and Jason that goes along with that ninth grader question. What do we do? At what point do we stop it, Jason? Or what's your thought on this as far as if for some reason they can't go this year? Do we stop it at ninth graders getting to go the following year? Do we stop it at 10th grade? Have you given that any thought?
So can I just chime in for a second? So I've thought a lot about this because I have a son who was supposed to attend a Washington DC field trip the year that 9/11 happened. And those trips were all canceled. So he missed it. That year they missed it. There have been times that we have canceled field trips because of weather events that have occurred. We haven't been able to reschedule them, that sort of thing. Just throwing that out there as sometimes life happens, so I think that's something that we have to also just consider that, that, and obviously it's your decision, but this could open up, this could set precedent for many, many things. Yes. Yeah.
So Jason, your thoughts?
The reason why I had brought this forward because it was made public comment by the board at the time of the cancellation, and just because of the time frame that we're at, and if it was something that the board wished, I wanted to make sure that I had enough time to plan it. I want to give any student the opportunity to have this educational experience, this in-person experiential learning experience. Do I see this as being something that should go on exponentially based on a situation? No. I think that these students registered for a trip that we did not have a pandemic going on at the time, and this came on at the last minute. And I think that this 1 year for this one group of students is very unique. Sue, just like you're saying with your son, the 9/11, that wasn't anything that they expected to happen. We're in a situation now where parents have the knowledge of what's going on in the world and need to make that decision based on what's going on. I think that giving the students the opportunity to travel who are at THS, if that is what they want to do, I would be very, very glad to have them with us because they missed out on so much last year. Would I continue this, like I said, going forward? I don't think that that's something necessary. I know that there's some other questions based on conversation that need to be looked at in regards to the trip. But as far as this trip is concerned, I would like to be able to offer the 9th grade the ability to travel at the same time that the 8th grade is traveling. They would have a sub itinerary where they would not necessarily interact with the 8th grade. For ease of running the trip, I would just have them in the same hotel, but in different locations. We would need separate chaperones and that type of thing from the high school.
When were you planning the trip?
So currently the trip is scheduled for the week prior to the Memorial Day vacation. So that would be Tuesday, May 25th to Friday, May 28th. It's the same week that we do it every year. I reached out to my trip coordinator at World Strides today, but she is out of the office until Friday, so have not received a email back from her based on a conversation I had with Ms. Ferguson earlier today.
I asked Jason to look into the possibility of running this kind of trip during a school vacation rather than pulling our kids out of school. That's how most districts do this sort of thing. And especially now when our secondary students are not able to be in school every day.
And that's what the high school traditionally does.
Right, our high school trips that go, for overnight.
Or go even abroad.
Correct.
Do it.
They go off school time. Yeah.
I have a question on the cost, Jason. Do you know if it's opened up to the 9th graders this year? Will that benefit the group having more kids attend?
The price is the same as long as I have 35 students go on the trip. So combining this with the 8th grade means that the price stays the same. If I were to make it a completely separate trip for just the 9th grade, I would have to have at least 35 kids to run the trip. So I can include, if I have 10 9th graders that want to go, I can still do it because I have a minimum enough 8th graders going.
Okay.
So yeah, and the price would be the same as it is for the 8th grade.
Fiona?
So, I think we know that there's unfortunately a possibility we're not going to be able to travel at all. But if we are able to travel, I guess I look at this pandemic a little bit differently than other things because the kids were literally locked in their house for months. So I don't look at this as an ongoing thing either, but if we could possibly give them an opportunity, I'm not sure a lot of them would go. Do you know how many current 8th graders have interest in attending the trip?
I currently have 70 students registered for the trip.
70.
Do you know how many ninth graders would be interested by any chance?
I wanted to put out, I have a survey put together that I shared with the administration that I would like to send out to the 9th grade. I don't know if that's gone out yet, but I do have a survey, a Google form ready to go with just some preliminary information to try and get a sense of who would be interested.
Right, we were waiting for this meeting so that we
Yep.
could talk
Oh,
about
okay.
it, decide.
I mean, I tend to agree with Fiona that if we are able to travel in April, whether it be during spring vacation or the week before Memorial Day, and we could give these kids that opportunity. I personally thought the Washington trip was one of the best vacations I've ever had in my life, and I've been on a lot of trips. I would love to be able to see these kids experience that just for the mere fact that they've been in lockdown for basically months. And, you know, if we can throw something out for some encouragement and just a change in everything that they've experienced, maybe it would be a good thing, a good morale booster. I don't know, it's just my thought.
Gary?
Well, personally, all 6 of my kids went to DC and they'll never forget it. I never went to DC and I'll never forget it. So I always remind my mom.
You should go, Gary.
Well, no, I did go and my kids got to in their 20s, but if they don't go now, they won't go until God knows. when.
Right.
Whatever we can do to get our kids down there to go to the museums and learn something.
Yeah.
I think we should bend the rules a little. And 1 year exception, like Jason said, I think is.
Mhm.
Jason?
Yeah, if we were going to have to logistically figure this out year after year, if every trip was canceled, that would, I think, be kind of a nightmare, but just for this one exception.
Jason?
In thinking through the conversation that I had with Ms. Ferguson earlier today, my one concern in trying to change the dates at this point is that families have registered and may already have things going on in April. I know that I'm in the process of deciding whether or not I'm going to be traveling in April. I completely understand, Ms. Ferguson, what you're saying in regards to when this trip takes place. And I have already put forward to the administration the 2022 trip and could look into possibly moving those dates to a vacation time. But with parents having already registered for this trip and some have already paid in full, and then changing those dates, I just fear that there may be students or families that then can't go.
Mm-hmm.
Jess?
So I'm going to be the naysayer and say that I do have some concerns about including the 9th graders. I think the demands in 9th grade are very different than 8th grade. I think you're going to have kids that are missing out on instructional time. In 8th grade, it's kind of built into the curriculum. You've got a whole bunch of kids going. I mean, I feel like it's structured differently in a way that's much more feasible and much less disruptive. I don't think that pulling a bunch of 9th graders or you're not pulling them, but you're allowing them to miss class for these days towards the end of the school year, especially in a year like this year when people are already not even close to where they need to be a lot of times. I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea. And it stinks that everything happened last year the way that it did, but a lot of kids missed out on a lot of things.
Yes.
And I am a little concerned about making exceptions for one group of students and not for all of the other groups of students that missed out on other things that they couldn't do. So that would be my concerns. I understand what everybody else is saying too, though.
Would it be, sorry, go ahead, Kathy.
I tend to agree with Jess on, I wonder about 9th graders missing 4 days of instruction in May. And the academic concerns that would arise around that. How would that work be made up? What would the expectations be?
that kind of goes along with my question, Kathy. I can't see the screen, so I'm not sure, Ellen, if you're pointing at me or not.
I said Sue.
Okay. Is it something for the ninth graders, Jason, that can be built into their curriculum? Perhaps one of their history classes, they have to do the same thing the eighth graders have to do, write an essay, or do something a little bit more than what the eighth graders would have to do in order to cover a grade or two,
that wouldn't necessarily be something that I could demand. One of the things that World Strides is very unique in that they are an accredited institution, and they do have coursework that they allow students to do on their own time to earn credits. Obviously, those credits would have to be approved by the Board of Ed or accepted by the Board of Ed, but there is coursework that World Strides does offer students who do travel in their programs to earn high school credits. And it's not anything that we've ever had. It's always been put out there that it's something that the students can do, and that it would be up to a family member to petition the school or the board for acceptance of those credits. So there is coursework that World Strides does offer outside, and it's supposed to be done within a certain amount of time in regards to what the course requirements are. And I understand what Jess and Ms. Toda are saying in regards to it's not just a history class. There's all the other courses that they're missing, and I completely understand that. And I will so that's I see their concern. I do understand that. I just felt like this needed to be addressed because it was said publicly in a meeting, and the reputation of the trip and myself and what we're doing. I just want to make sure that we're closing those things that may have been opened if we need to.
And I understand that also, but I also chaperoning the DC trip from 3 times. There's so many kids in Torrington that never leave Torrington. And there's quite an education to be had with the things that are done in Washington, DC. I don't know, I guess I look at it that you would have to put parameters in place. They would have to make up their work, something, but I just think for a lot of our students, it's an opportunity that they won't again see something outside of Torrington.
That's what I meant when I said the second part of it.
This is something that if it's being offered, the parents need to know now because they do like a payment plan that other parents have already been doing since September.
Or since the kids were in 6th grade.
Right. Yeah, it takes many years.
That's the one thing with this. Right. That is the one thing that needs to be put out there is that, yes, these parents have already paid for the trip once. They received complete reimbursement of all money put out of their pocket. Yes, there was some fundraising money that is student activity money that was individually held, but that fundraising money was used to help reimburse everybody the full amount. So these students would be paying for the trip in full. Due to the COVID situation, I'm not being able to do any kind of fundraising because all fundraising has to be contactless, and the only fundraising that I know that is contactless is Yankee Candle, and from my understanding, they're having trouble doing shipments. So at this point, there is no fundraising that's taking place. There is fundraising that World Strides does offer through their website, which is direct to a student's account. And there is some scholarship money that we have available, but through the school. So I think in putting out the initial survey, I did put into the information and was looking for revisions if necessary, that this would basically be a complete out-of-pocket expense to the parents.
And what would happen, Jason, if it gets canceled again in the spring?
So, and this is part of, all families have been strongly, I can't require them, all families have been strongly encouraged to purchase the trip insurance. So this group of families, I think, would know at firsthand that they would need to purchase that trip insurance and that they would get all of their money back minus the cost of the trip insurance, which is $125.
Does that applies even if there's a federal shutdown?
Correct.
World Strides won't honor that without the insurance?
No, they're a for-profit organization. They're not a non-for-profit.
Okay.
No, hold on. They're a non-for-profit, but they do have expenses that they are putting out that they have to cover. And so, yeah, even with the Fed, because that was something that was brought up in all student travel organizations, all travel organizations. World Strides was actually very generous. And in being as generous as they were, they filed for bankruptcy protection, which they came out of very quickly, a reorganization, because they were so generous in refunding families. So it is strongly recommended that the families purchase the insurance, and that lets them know that regardless of why the trip is canceled, whether it's them or the company or the school, that they will receive all money back that they paid out of pocket minus the cost of the insurance.
So Jason, how many signed up for the trip last year?
Well, we started out, we were at one of the highest last year prior to the pandemic. I think almost to 160 students.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
So that's 160 ninth graders that this would.
But no, because you have to think, not all of those students are at THS.
Right. And they have different circumstances now too that
Right, and so we wouldn't be able to
not allow them.
We wouldn't be able to offer this to anybody who's not at THS because we can't ask that school district to.
Right, okay.
And it would knock out spring athletes. They're not going to be able to go.
Right. So it would be a handful of students is what you're thinking.
I don't have a sense of how many it would be. Because, yeah, I don't know how many of the students that canceled are at THS, and I don't know who's playing sports or whatever. So
Right, yeah.
I had 152 students that were registered to go at the time of cancellation. And then I don't have, once we canceled, finally, I think we were down to about just around 100 students. I'm trying to remember the exact number. At the point that we had to do a final cancellation, we still had about 100 students or just under 100 students that were interested in still going
Okay.
when it was going to be rescheduled in August.
I was just saying, that's a lot of money to come up with without any of the fundraising. So
Correct.
that will eliminate, some students as well, because they just won't be able to afford it.
Many, because it's expensive,
Yeah.
right? It's like $1,000.
But they've already paid and got the money back. I think that's.
But also with COVID, they might have spent that money. You know?
Right. And that's right. So the cost of the trip for this year, I'm just trying to pull up because I think it's right now because the early registration price is gone. If you give me a minute, I can pull it up. I don't have it right off the top of my head.
Okay, in the meantime, Jess has a question. Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, just going back to my concern about the amount of instructional time that these students would lose. I think you would also, if you were to move forward with this, need to put something in place as far as like an academic ineligibility. Because if you have kids that are not passing their classes, they have no business missing 4 days of school towards the end of the year.
We do that with the current 8th grade. There are criteria that are put in place that if you're not passing a certain number of classes, if you have missed a certain number of days of school, or if you have behavior issues or behavior things that have happened, then you're not eligible to go on the trip.
But what happens if you've paid, if your family just ponied up all this money?
So, and this is all communicated right from the beginning that if you've purchased the insurance, you get all of the money back minus the cost of the insurance. And if you didn't purchase the insurance, then you are subject to the cancellation policy. And that is communicated with the families right from the get-go when we start doing registration a year and 2 months prior to the date of the trip.
Disciplinary infractions at school too,
Yeah,
impede
right.
your ability to go.
We've had students that were pulled from the trip the day before the trip one year because of social media things that took place. The cost of the trip this year is $849. $849. That does not include the trip insurance of $125.
That hasn't gone up much at all in the last 5 or 6 years.
That is the one thing that I've been able to do is maintain the cost of the trip right around that.
Yeah, that same amount.
Yeah.
That's good. I expected it to be well over $1,000 or $1,100 at this point.
So it's 960.
Well, I don't think that we can make the decision or the assumption for the families whether or not they have the money. I don't know. I think letting the survey go out to the high school group to see how many kids would be, in fact, be interested, and just to your point, implement the same guidelines that are in place for the 8th graders, and then maybe in the meantime we can take it back to the full board and get their input, see if there's any other questions we may have missed.
It's too
So-
late for us to approve
Right.
for our
Right.
policy.
for
Right.
policy.
You already approved the field trip, though, you're not changing it.
No, we did, but the only thing we're doing is
You're
So-
really just deciding if you want the
deciding if
survey
we
to go
want the
out,
ninth graders to go or not.
or the survey to go out to see what the.
Right.
interest is.
Right, and is that up to this committee or should it be up to the full board?
Well,
Nothing's up to this committee.
So honestly,
No, I think it has to go back to the board, right?
this could be my own ignorance. So I'm thinking back to when I was a principal. If our fourth graders, here's a good example, our fourth graders, year after year, go to the airport, to the New England Air Museum. If we decided to open that up to 6th grade, I don't know that we would have brought it to the board to make that.
My only question with that though is that when we do the field trip application, it states which students are involved in the trip. So it's always been my understanding if there's any change to what's been proposed that the board approved, that it needs to go back for reapproval.
Okay.
That's been always my understanding in having run field trips. And so we're adding a different group of students to a trip that's already been approved.
But the out-of-state trip has already been approved. I think the
Right.
question is, there may be zero interest.
Mm.
We don't,
Right.
we
right,
don't know.
so we could set the
So I
send
think
survey out.
sending the survey gives you an idea, are they even interested?
Mhm.
Doesn't
Right.
commit you to doing it. And then because of Thanksgiving, the board's meeting early this month.
Right, but I don't think it's up to us to say, go ahead and send the survey. I think it's up to administration to decide if they want to do that.
Right, and we'd asked him to just hold off until you had this conversation.
Correct, but,
Just to give input.
and
yep.
there was nowhere to go, so it came to
Sure.
us.
Right, right.
I
What
got it.
happens, right? Yeah.
Well, no, but I think at some level, the board should say, yes, we will make this change because there is a significant academic impact on these kids. Very different in the 9th grade when not everyone's going than there is in the 8th grade when almost everyone's going.
And there's a huge impact on the kids, the 9th graders who aren't going, because now whatever the teacher was gonna do with all those kids, they may have to do something completely different and then provide a whole alternate thing for these other kids. And you have that times 8 periods. I mean, I don't have a problem sending the survey out, but I will vote against this if it goes to the full board for that reason, for the academic reasons.
And what's been approved is an 8th grade field trip, not a 9th grade field trip.
During the school year.
How is it handled when the other kids go abroad? Is it a certain group of children that are like in the same classes? How does that work?
It's not during
It's-
school.
During vacation.
And that was
They
like,
never go on trips during school,
No.
like
That
that
was a bit-
extended trip?
That was my other question though. With the virus, would it make sense to move it to June when it's gonna be warmer?
It's too hot in Washington to go in June.
Always warm in Washington.
Literally,
But it is now.
figuratively.
But for the virus, that's a good thing.
Right.
Mhm.
57 degrees, 55 degrees in Washington right now.
So.
Jason, is that an option? I'm sorry.
In June? I mean, I was willing to do the trip in August. This past year. I
That's
mean,
crazy.
I was planning on going the beginning of August. I mean, we'll make do with what we're allowed to do. It's that,
How many kids were willing to do it in August?
I think that's what I don't know that I have the correct number. I want to say is, I think just below 100. I'll look through my files real quick to see if I could find it.
To still do it in August?
Yep. I believe, I'm gonna pull up my documents to see if I can find that information for you, Ellen.
I think I may still have that.
Yeah.
Jason.
I do, I'm on my computer, I'm on my school computer going into my Google Drive. So let me see what I've got here, hold on.
Jess, would you feel otherwise if this trip were over the summer?
Yeah, my only concern is the loss of academic time. I don't care if it's over the summer at all.
Is there a possibility of changing it from May to June this year? After school?
Again, I would caution, just because of the date having already been set and parents planning on sending their children on that date based on, you know, and then what do they have planned going forward? You know, will we start losing students, and will some of those students those families be missing out on the $125 because they have to cancel due to a conflict? I had 75 students that were looking to go in August.
It's going in June, where's the academic component?
Well, it's still a wonderful experience.
You're
No,
not
I know, it's a
required to
wonderful
provide an
experience,
academic
but-
component if it's.
Right, you don't have to worry about the
Yeah.
instructional impact. It's the last week in June.
I mean, if you're talking the last week of school, I think that would be, you know, I just think as you're getting into vacation time, we don't know what families have already planned. Granted, we are in the middle of a pandemic, so who's really going anywhere? But thinking out a year from, you know, into the summer, some people may be thinking that we're at a point that they can be doing that. We don't know what's going to happen over the next 3 to 6 to 8 months. So I will do as I'm told.
Well, I mean, we can always send the survey, just what is the interest?
Sure.
And it
Yeah.
will be presented to the board and for the final decision.
Yep.
But if we get interest,
Yeah, then you'll know your numbers.
and then the
we'll
full
have
board
that.
can decide, because
Sure.
I'm torn, I see both sides.
Yeah, so we can send that out. I know Jason has worked hard on that. It's already set. So
you're
we
gonna
can
send a survey
get
to
that
eighth
out.
grade too about a possible date change, or only ninth?
I think that was focused in on ninth grade, so. Can you left a message for World Strides about a different time, right, Jason?
I sent my account manager an email asking about a different date for this year. And I don't foresee, as I know, working with World Strides, I don't believe it would be an issue on their end to change the date. I mean, it's just a matter of when we're going. It would change what the last payment date would be. So the last payment for the trip in May is March 11th. So if we're moving, so it's 60 to 75 days out from travel is when the trip needs to be paid in full. So now we're cutting short the amount of time that the families have to pay the trip off, because that would have to now be a lot sooner than March 11th if
But
we're
if-
going to go in April.
June, then it would give them.
If it was
longer.
moved
them
to
more.
June, it would give them more time, yes. So I don't see it as being an issue other than that and moving the final date of payment. I believe her email said that she'll be back in the office on Friday, or she may be out through Friday. So prior to any further meeting, I would be able to get you that. She knows how, she enjoys working with me in Torrington Public Schools because of how much we get into this and how well we do in organizing it and the amount of students. So she may even be looking at her email and get back to me before she's back from her time off. That's the relationship that we have with World Strides. So
That's great. So,
So-
yes, get the survey out then.
Whatever you decide.
Okay. Yeah, and then we can report back on it.
So-
But the full board really needs to
Then
make
you-
that decision.
Well, then you have the information.
Right, and we have the information.
Yeah, and I would include in there about the having it after the school year.
A possible change
Some
in
parents
date.
might be more comfortable with that because the
Right.
farther out it is, the
Right.
less chance there's gonna be
COVID,
complications with the virus.
So
Yep.
can we add that question to the survey?
Sure.
Well, then, that would have to go to eighth graders too then.
Yeah, I mean, whoever's getting this.
Well, the eighth
Well,
grade
'cause the
parents
eighth
should,
graders are
should
already
also
committed.
be
Right, the
aware,
eighth graders are committed and,
Oh,
but,
so we're not gonna.
But if we're changing the date for the 9th grade, I think that then we need to change the trip for the 8th grade because we really do need to do this in conjunction.
right, and I think that
Yes.
the eighth
Yeah, it
grade
would have to.
parents should be aware that the ninth grade is gonna be involved also. Ninth graders could
But they
also.
might
Oh.
not be.
right, I think.
They
we have
might
to wait
not
till
be,
we send the
but-
survey out and get some sense.
But even if like I said, I have been assured that even if the 9th grade are to go at the same time as the 8th grade, they will not interact with each other. There will be no,
You have a
there'll be a,
separate bus just for the ninth
Yeah.
grader? There's only
yes.
10?
We will figure out how to make that work. If we have at least 35 kids, then that's just one bus. If we have less than 35, I would have to talk with World Strides and how we would make that happen. But, it's very easy to put one group of kids in front, another group of kids in back with staff in between, if we need to do it that way. But other than that, they would contract a separate bus while in DC for them to do their own itinerary.
And you have a lot of.
But we don't know that until we know the numbers.
Yeah.
But
so-
if it's the board's wish that they go in June, then I need to see I would like to, at the same time, poll the 8th grade parents to see what their interest or feasibility of moving the trip to June would be.
Right, yeah. So maybe two separate surveys?
Yeah.
It would be a 9th grade survey and an 8th grade survey, and it's very easy for me to put that together. In doing that, can I just ask for clarification? Are you talking about June once school is over, or the end of June, like the last week of school?
Oh, no, once
When
school is
school
over.
is over.
It'd have to be the last full week. of
Yeah,
June.
like the last full week of school. I mean, of June,
Yeah.
sorry.
Or
So we're looking at the week of June 28th
Yeah,
to
that's
July,
probably
to
safest.
July 2nd,
We're out early. No, we're out early.
I think
or
we're
the 21st to the
with the
25th.
14th or the
Right.
21st, depending on the snow
Right.
days.
So that 21st to 20, or the 22nd to the 25th, right?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So that would be the alternate date that you guys would like me to
One of us
consider.
July 4th.
I would like to stay away from that weekend leading up to July 4th just because of traffic.
Yeah, yeah, so 22nd to 25th.
As crazy as I am and wanting to take kids to the inauguration one year, I don't want to get around July 4th.
No. Yeah,
So 22nd through the 25th then?
That would be the alternate date that you guys would like me to see if is possible, then I will ask about that.
I think even for the 8th graders, because of the loss of instruction last year too, it might be good for them as well to not be missing 4 days.
No one's going to be harmed
yeah.
by being in school 4 more days.
Yeah.
And no teachers will be in school either
Right.
as chaperones, if there are any.
Yep, makes it a lot easier.
And just so you know, with the current 8th grade, I have 18 parents who are offering to pay to go on the trip. So, I mean,
Wow.
that's enough parents, right? That's enough adults right there to cover the trip. However, going on a multi-day out-of-state trip, I wouldn't want to go with just parent chaperones. I really do feel like I need staff
Right, yeah.
chaperones as well.
Can the Board of Ed
taking-
chaperone?
I have said this all along. I think every Board of Ed member should go on the trip at least once. I know you all support this trip and you think it's educationally sound, but I don't, as Fiona would tell you, there's nothing like being on that trip to see what, how good it is for the kids and how much the kids get out of it.
And how well behaved they are.
Yes.
They really are. They really are. It's very impressive.
So the only thing is taking it out of the school time is it may limit which staff members are willing to chaperone on a volunteer basis outside of the school time. So that's the only thing I'm concerned about is if I don't have the staff that are willing to do it, am I still able to do it with just parents?
Can you survey your chaperone staff as well?
Well, I don't have any stat. That's another thing that I need to survey to see who the staff chaperones would be. I mean, I have my general, I have my usuals that go with me, but I always look to see which other staff members, based on the number of students, are interested to going, and I haven't done that yet this year, just waiting for different decisions to be made. I just got a text from Mr. Fritsch, who's my second in command, who's probably going to be on vacation that as soon as school is out. So he probably wouldn't be available. He's my right-hand man.
Fiona, maybe we'll have to make the sacrifice.
Say we should video blog the entire trip.
There you go.
And Allie, I was very excited to hear what you were talking about because it's going to make my streaming of like the wreath laying ceremony and all those other things, I think, so much better.
That'll be great.
It is, yeah.
That is the other thing is right now I do have a wreath laying ceremony scheduled for that week in May. And if I'm to move it, I don't know if I will secure the ability for us to lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown. Because I've got to reserve that a year out.
Yeah.
So we may be having to cancel that. Like I said, I don't know if there's still availability if we were to move it to June.
So if you can gather that information, Jason, that'll be great. And then we'll look at the 9th grade survey one more time before that gets sent out. And that should be sent out this week. So I think we're good to go.
Will you ask THS administration to put that out in a power announcement or something to the families?
Yeah, I can probably do it.
Okay, because I wouldn't have that access, and I will, by the end of the day tomorrow, have a survey for you to look at for the 8th grade families that are already registered.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize if I had this go about in the wrong way or caused any confusion. That wasn't my intent. It was just that I know.
No, not at all.
Not at all, Nathan, not at all.
Nothing's normal right now.
Right. And we don't even know what May or June is going to bring, so.
Right.
All right, we discussed
All
that
right.
pretty good. Comments for the good of the order, Kathy?
No, just thank you, Jason, for all your hard work on this. I know you're so passionate about it, and I appreciate that and all you're doing to see if it can go forward.
Thank you.
No comments.
Sue?
No, all good.
Sue?
All good.
All good.
Ally?
Thanks.
Don't know your name.
David.
David?
All good.
Fiona?
Yep, good.
All right.
How people on.
Oh, Sue, sorry.
I would just echo what Kathy said. Jason, thank you for the effort that you put into this and have put into this in the past. Much appreciated. And Kim, thank you for your efforts on the sexual harassment policy. That seems like it was kind of horrific to have to deal with that.
Thank you.
Mark?
I'll pass. Thank you very much.
You don't want to be second in command to take over for Mr. Fritsch?
That he's two big shoes to fill.
Yes, thank you, Jason. Okay, topics for future meetings. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either right now.
We'll find something.
Something will emerge as.
It will, or be brought to us.
Especially, right,
Right.
with COVID and
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Okay, motion to adjourn
So moved.
Second.
at 8:35. Kathy and Jeff.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye,
Good
thank you.
night.
Bye,
Thank
thank
you.
Have a good
you.
night.